have some breaking news that we are just getting, and a lot of people did not know this, but apparently every airline is aware, all of the transcontinental airlines. In 4 hours, there is an expiration of something that is called airspace ability, meaning the U.S. airlines' ability to cross Russian airspace. These are basic airlines, regular air carriers with tourists on board. This expires in 4 hours. Both sides are waiting for each other to set a date to resume negotiations, but representatives from U.S. carriers, like the ones you see on your screen, and are meeting with officials at the State Department to try and figure out whether U.S. airlines are going to be allowed to fly over Russian airspace. And right now, according to the Korean Times, American Airlines says it's not going to be flying right now. They are avoiding Russian airspace and urging passengers to reconsider travel plans. They are rerouting selected flights to Beijing and Hong Kong so that they do not go over Russian airspace. And what timing is that? Unbelievable. Just as the United States has already laid down some sanctions on Russian individuals, oligarchs, and Russian companies and banks, but was expected yesterday to announce new sanctions, but we didn't get them. This, as President Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at this moment are in high-level meetings and discussions talking about everything from trade to security to fighting North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Bob Hormats is a former Assistant Secretary of State for Economy and Business. He's also the former Vice Chair of Goldman Sachs, here to talk about all of this. We have a lot of news here. Which piece of this matters the most right now?
Well, it's very confusing what's going on, but the current status is that large numbers of American planes that go to various points in East Asia in particular fly over the eastern, the Russian Far East. And so it's possible, and this is not an uncommon thing, but it's possible, given what you've just said, that the Russians are now holding that up or using it as a bargaining tool, because it would be much less convenient for American planes to go around the Russian Far East as opposed to going directly over. It costs them a lot more mileage and gasoline to do that.
And you can see that American Airlines, which has said it will avoid Russian airspace as of right now.
It has to go further to the east to get around.
Down 1%.
Right.
Okay, let's broaden the discussion to North Korea, Japan, Shinzo Abe right now with the president. But there's also this gigantic, you talk about a bargaining chip, trade. The TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, we are hearing, because the president said it, that he has enabled Larry Kudlow and Robert Lighthizer, the trade representatives, to reconsider joining back into the TPP if the 11 nations would have us.
Well, there are a lot of issues that have to be dealt with. One, the one you've pointed out, would the other countries let us back in? A lot of the things that the 11 countries agreed on were things that reduced some of the progress that the United States had made in the negotiations among the 12 countries. In other words, we had gotten certain things in the agreement that were eliminated when the 11 made their deal. So the question is, would the 11 countries restore some of the benefits for the United States that were eliminated when they made their own deal? That's one big issue.
And there's huge tension with China. And the whole point, apparently, or at least part of the big point of TPP and joining it, was that it was ex-China. It left China out in the cold, and that would ostensibly force China's hand to start behaving. I mean, Bob, come on. Well, the Chinese are so imbalanced when it comes to what we nail them on tariffs versus what they nail us on tariffs. It's ridiculous.
Well, that was why I was in favor of TPP. It was not perfect, but it had a number of things in it. One was it had a number of elements that reduced the degree to which governments could support state enterprises. That was part of the deal. It gave more support to unions. It gave more support for environmental purposes. It did a lot of things that would have made it more market-oriented. It was never meant to contain China, since most of the countries in the TPP trade more with China than they do with the U.S., but it was meant to establish rules which were much more conducive to the American view of what a market should look like internationally and domestically.
I know
and therefore, by our not being in there, weakened our hand in the discussions in the TPP and weakened the TPP.
I know you heard about a company called ZTE. This is a Chinese semiconductor company that sources some of its parts from U.S. companies. The U.S. government has now said none of these U.S. companies can sell because they're slapping sanctions on ZTE for having done a workaround to the Iran sanctions.
Right.
They were selling products to Iran that had some of U.S.'s products that they buy inside them.
That was the American, that's the American claim, and that was the reason the United States government decided to take this action.
So Stephen Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, is supposed to make some announcements on barriers and bans on Chinese investment in U.S. technology overall. What do you think about that? Do you think that that will slap the hand hard of China, or might it hurt U.S. companies more?
Well, that's a tough thing to call because American companies are investing in China. Chinese technology companies have invested here or bought into American companies or established greenfield companies. So he's going to have to figure out the right balance. There are rules under CFIUS which identify national security risks of foreign investments from various countries, China being one, but not the only one. So what the restrictions are going to be and how you define a national security risk is something he's going to have to work out. It's sort of opaque now. It has to be a little clearer for us and for other countries.
Thank you so much, Bob, for your analysis. We do appreciate it. Bob Hormats.